Welcome to the Tech Today podcast. It's your host, John Mayetta. Over the past couple of days, we've published two articles about advanced AI. One, we talked about the risks, some of the risks inherent with advanced AI, and the second one was entitled Sam Altman and Satya Nadella Are Not Heroes. Sam Altman being the co-founder of OpenAI, Satya Nadella being the CEO of Microsoft. And if you start with the first one, I don't want to go through the article verbatim, but I'll talk about one of the risks. So with the current version of GPT, the LLM can learn how to replicate a particular person's voice with a 3-second data set. So a 3-second audio sample, GPT can replicate that person's voice. So think about all of the voice-activated protocols, typically they're front-end security protocols, that we have in the economy. Think about banking, for example, where you can open your account or get account detail, account information through voice commands. So Gen AI can take that brief sample set and navigate through your bank history, as an example. And there are many other protocols that leverage voice as a form of authentication. And just when you think about the economy in general, the various internet security protocols, as I mentioned, authentication, legacy authentication, services built around things such as voice. These Gen AI systems are going to be able to crack the code, if they can't already, on these various protocols, whether it be GPT-5 or 6 or 7, as well as the related LLMs being developed by Google and Amazon and Anthropic. There needs to be some sort of a governor such that as these new capabilities evolve, the existing protocols in the economy need to be hardened. And so there needs to be some level of communication between the companies developing these large language models in the private sector. So let's leave it at that at a high level. We get into some of the other threats in the article, which I will link to. But then you get to the case of OpenAI. So it's obvious that Sam Altman lied to his board, likely about the capabilities of most recent GPT release. And so that needs to be public. I realize that OpenAI is a private company, but whatever it was that gave the board pause and that gave the board, or that served as a catalyst for the board in removing Altman, albeit temporarily, whatever that catalyst was needs to be in the public domain, given the risk inherent in what OpenAI is developing. So good corporate governance, being a good corporate citizen, being a good citizen of not only the United States, but the world, is reason enough for OpenAI to have to disclose what the board's concerns were around whatever it was that Altman failed to disclose. So the American people, I'd say all people, have a right to know what that risk is, given that OpenAI and these other large language models have the ability to impact everybody in a negative manner. And that's today. That's not a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Furthermore, when you think about these large language models, so OpenAI, roughly 10 million to develop GPT 3, 100 million to develop GPT 4, roughly $1 billion to develop GPT 5. And so these large language models, it's just going to be a handful of companies that are going to have the balance sheet to develop these LLMs. So Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. You can throw Oracle in there. Yeah, I didn't mention them in the note, but they have the balance sheet to do it. And the largest companies with the largest balance sheets are going to have more firepower to throw at LLMs. And so Apple, being the world's most valuable company with the largest balance sheet, if it wanted to, could direct more capital toward LLMs than anybody, if it wanted to. So the power is going to accrue to the few. The largest tech company is going to accrue far more power and capability as these LLMs evolve than any of their peers, any of their peer technology companies. And because power is going to accrue to the few, that means that the federal government and central governments around the world, frankly, are going to try to insert themselves into these companies. The U.S. federal government certainly will. And while other sovereign nations, while other central governments won't necessarily be able to insert themselves into a United States, a U.S.-based company at the board level, let's say, right? I mean, they can't step into Apple, right? If you're the UK or Germany or China, can't step into Apple the way the Biden administration could. But they could exercise influence on the ground in those countries. So because so much power is going to accrue to these large companies, governments are going to want to have influence over those companies and over that technology, just as we've seen with social media. The way the U.S. government, for example, has exercised leverage over the social media companies to control the flow of information. So just think about social media on steroids when it comes to Gen AI. Can you imagine deep fakes? I talked about voice deep fakes, but how deep fakes are going to be leveraged across political campaigns in the future at all levels, not just at the central level, but state campaigns. Because with LLMs, the technology becomes democratized. As a user, it's not going to require tens of millions of dollars to build a product, use a product, create something from the product. But the cost is negligible. So there's a ton of risk associated with these LLMs as they get deployed into the broader economy. And with that positive note, we'll end the podcast. That's all for now. See you next time.